live right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're glad to have you watching Tennessee Aquarium's Facebook Live event today. You are looking directly at the green mandarin dragonette. It's a beautiful fish, not commonly displayed in aquariums across the country, but this is a great view because a lot of times they're kind of reclusive. I'm going to give you a few minutes to get some more folks joining us today. We've got a special program here in the Ocean Journey building in our live coral exhibit. This is a really cool exhibit. It's actually, and it's hard for me to say this because it's hard to say that I like one exhibit over another at the Tennessee Aquarium, but honestly, this exhibit is one of my favorite exhibits, and I'll tell you why. Because you can really sit in front of this exhibit and enjoy the activity and the behaviors of these animals as they're interacting with the live coral and all the other live elements in here. It's just a beautiful exhibit, and you know, over the years it's kind of been like a garden. And there's no better expert to talk about this underwater garden than Kyle McPheeters. Kyle, thanks for joining us today.
Welcome.
And you know, when you first started this exhibit, it was much different because a lot of this has grown into place and really flourished. And under your care, it's really become an underwater city.
Yeah, definitely. This exhibit is constantly growing and changing. The coral, just its very nature, like Tom mentioned, you know, it's kind of a garden. Every single piece is constantly changing size and shape, getting bigger, overshadowing another coral, so then that coral might get smaller, and I'll be in there, you know, pruning a little bit. But yeah, everything's constantly changing and different sizes, different growth. Since this exhibit was started, it's grown a ton. Most of these corals were grown from very small pieces, and they've just really gotten big over the last 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, we want to remind everybody to, you know, let us know where you're watching from. Tell us who you are, say hello, ask any questions of Kyle about live coral and all these beautiful fish in here. Dave Jones, thanks for watching. Sean, thanks for answering the question. Yeah, absolutely. Karen, thanks for watching. Mustafa, thanks for watching. And Joshua, we really appreciate you clicking on that Donate Now button and supporting the work of all of our aquarium staff as we're in this emergency situation and have been closed since March 14th. We've just passed the 1 month mark the other day, and so glad to have Dee Dee watching, glad to have Jill and Diane watching from Ohio. Thanks for watching. Kyle, one of the things that you stress is everything that's in this exhibit is alive, and that's much different than some of the other exhibits that we have where we have concrete work in the big saltwater tank that replicates coral. But look at how gorgeous this is as each frond in that is kind of waving in the flow. So what are we looking at right here, this green piece?
Yeah, this one is a pagoda cup coral, it's called. This coral has a hard skeleton. It's actually an encrusting coral that it'll encrust on the rock. And then each little flower there is going to be a polyp, it's called. And each polyp would be capable of starting a whole new colony. So that thing will just spread over time. It will produce sexually and asexually. Mostly it just divides its polyps and will spread that way. So one polyp becomes two and so on and so forth. Most of the corals in here will reproduce that way. But yeah, like you mentioned, everything is alive, whereas all of our other exhibits will use artificial, man-made corals and plants. But yeah, this is the only place that we keep live coral. And yeah, everything from the corals to the clam to this soft coral to the hard coral, all of it in this exhibit is alive.
And again, it's one of those exhibits that the more time you spend here, the more things you see. For example, what do we have going on up here in the upper corner of this tank? Right there on the wall, it looks like it's just a bump on the wall.
Yeah, so the longer you watch the tank, the more different things you'll see. That's a big snail right there. So that's actually in the exhibit to clean algae. So the very intense lights that help the corals grow will also grow nuisance algae. So there's a handful of these big snails in there roaming about cleaning the algae. They just all day, every day, they're just munching on that algae and keep the tank clean.
And down here at the bottom, you can see that green mandarin dragonette once again down there at the bottom. It's beautiful. Mac and James from Dayton, thanks for watching. They ask, where did the coral in this exhibit come from?
So much of this coral was brought as frags. We call a frag a very tiny piece of coral.
Or a fragment.
A fragment, exactly.
from other aquariums. So there's still a little coral collection going on from the oceans in a sustainable manner, but the bulk of what we'll use at aquariums and in the hobby is going to be stuff that's grown from other aquariums.
And Peyton, age 9, would like to know, how old is the coral in the tank?
Ooh, that's hard. So the way I mentioned how it reproduces, a colony can essentially live forever. Parts of it will die off, but then the new part continues. It'd be like a whole field of grass. One blade dies, but the rest of the grass continues to grow and thrive. So the exact age of any one is really impossible to say.
But in general, this exhibit has been here at the Tennessee Aquarium for how long?
I believe about 10 years.
Okay. So most of this, Peyton, you're 9, most of this came into the aquarium and has been installed in this location for just about as long as you're around. It's been here for 10 years. Glad to have everybody watching again today. This is really something else. There's so many different colors of coral, so many different textures. And right here, Kyle, this one looks like little balloons. What is that?
Yeah, that's called a green bubble coral because it looks like a bunch of bubbles. The bubble coral, it has a hard skeleton under all that fleshy tissue, and it's one of the more aggressive corals that I keep. And that sounds strange to say, that coral is aggressive, but all the coral has nematocysts, different stinging cells like jellyfish are equipped with, and depending on how, quote, aggressive they are, that kind of dictates the distance away from other corals they should be kept. That one will actually put out pretty long stinging tentacles at night, and so that's why he's kind of on a little platform by himself there. You see that mandarin?
Yeah, how about that?
Spotted mandarin that came out and chased him a little bit. Those are both males.
So talk about this fin that it has. Looks like it's got a very specialized fin.
So that's how you tell the males on the dragonettes. The male will have you call it a spike on the first ray of the dorsal fin, and the females just have a really short one. Strictly just for showing off. It has no utility other than just kind of showing off to the females.
This is another gorgeous fish here. That's the fox face. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the fox face is unique in that he's actually a venomous fish. So everyone's heard of the lionfish, of course, being venomous. The fox face has a similar venom on the spines of his dorsal fin and his anal fin as well. That they're needle-like, very sharp and hollow. So if he's threatened, he'll flick those up and he can inflict a venomous sting.
Lisa, thank you for donating to our Emergency Operations Fund. Mary Ann, thank you for clicking on the donate button and thank you for contributing to our Emergency Operations Fund. We do appreciate it. Karen says that coral looks like it's in an octopus puddle. And I'm not sure, Karen, were you talking about the bubble coral or were you talking about one of these other beautiful corals up here at top? These are branching corals. And again, if you look very closely, each branch has little things waving in the flow there. Talk about that, Kyle.
Yeah, so the one on the right, that's it's called a bird's nest coral, or Ceratopora. The bird's nest has very tiny polyps, so we saw the big polyps down here on the pagoda. That one just kind of looks fuzzy. Every little piece of fuzz, basically, is one of the polyps of that coral, so it's a much smaller polyped coral. Like the bubble coral and the pagoda, it has a stony skeleton, or calcium-based skeleton. This one doesn't encrust like the pagoda. It forms its own branches, it makes its own skeleton and creates its own structure that way, which provides a lot of shelter in the reef. They're one of the reef making corals, so they're actually building the structure of the reef through their skeleton. So if you see underneath are some of the older branches with no polyps, those branches would be dead. And the new polyps that grow over the top, that's the new growth, and that'll be the actual the new structure on the coral.
Yeah, outstanding. So we do have our Weekday Wonders educational programming that our education department has put together. You can find that on the Tennessee Aquarium's website at tnaqua.org. And we ask a daily question to go along with this programming to kind of bring science into the homes while everybody's staying safer at home. And today's question is, how often do ecosystems change? And it's a great question because coral reefs in particular are undergoing some changes right now, and not all of them are good. As a matter of fact, there are some coral reefs along the Florida coastline that are in trouble. And Kyle, what's causing problems for coral these days?
Yeah, so there's a few big factors. The ones we hear about and we think about the most are ocean acidification. So the ocean is typically always the same pH. You know, the ocean is so big and stable that the animals that live in it aren't accustomed to dealing with changes. Animals that live in freshwater, by and large, are more flexible in their pH demands because they do get changes more often. The ocean tends to remain pretty constant at around 8.4 pH. With the great amounts of CO2 that we're producing these days, CO2 will become carbonic acid, which is literally acidifying the ocean. So we're seeing that pH slip a little bit. Who knows, how far it can go or how far before it's a problem. But we are looking at potentially that being an issue for the corals. Another thing we hear about and we think about and we worry about is the warming of our oceans. Because just like the pH being constant, the coral reefs aren't really accustomed to dealing with changes in temperature. The ocean is such a big place, the temperature changes very slowly. So if we're seeing an increase in temperature based off or compared to historical numbers, the coral may not be prepared to deal with that, and we're seeing losses in coral reefs.
Yeah, and Dee Dee is watching from South Florida, and she said, yes, unfortunately, bleaching's happening right there. The good news is there's a large number of accredited zoos and aquariums that are partnering together right now. The Tennessee Aquarium is an AZA accredited institution. We're very proud of the consortium that is working to raise coral in the facilities on land to restore coral reefs that are offshore, particularly in Florida, where there are a number of coral species that are endangered right now. And usually when we think of endangered species, we think about elephants and rhinos and pandas and big animals like that, but it's these tiny little creatures that are building these beautiful structures in the oceans just off our shoreline that are also having some challenges and are considered endangered animals. So it's great that aquariums and zoos are banding together in a way to restore those coral reefs so we can have beautiful fish like these, the foxface, the yellow tang, and the green dragon mandarin fish, the dragonet mandarin fish. It's just a home for them, and it's a living city, and it's really great to kind of protect those buildings in a way. Great question that we always get, Kyle. Is coral an animal, mineral, or vegetable?
So coral is kind of all three combined. Strictly speaking, it is an animal, but the bright colors that you see on the corals is largely due to zooxanthellae, which is a symbiotic algae that actually lives inside the tissue of the coral. So the animal has algae inside of it, and that's mostly what gives us these colors, but it also provides the coral animal with food.
Right.
And it is a mineral in that it's constantly taking calcium, magnesium, strontium, various other elements out of the water to build that skeleton with. So the actual skeleton, I'm sure you've seen like at a curio shop, a coral skeleton. Feels very hard like a rock, but it's actually, it's solidified calcium that the coral has taken out of the water itself to build that skeleton. So it's all three.
Yeah. Aaron, thank you for asking. Adeline and Mike ask, where do you get your fish? Where do we get these beautiful fish?
So like the coral, a lot of them come from other aquariums. I've had a handful of fish donated from hobbyists, and we also once in a while will buy our fish from distributors as well. There's a lot of guys on the West Coast that their whole job is selling saltwater fish. So we'll buy fish once in a while as well.
Yeah, another great answer to that is the fact that you and others are here in accredited zoos and aquariums raising fish that are being shared with others. Talk a little bit about our large saltwater tank and some of the fish culturing that you've been involved with and how that process is working so we can raise fish within the aquarium to sustain these exhibits.
Yeah, exactly. That's a project we've been working on now for a couple of years. Another aquarist and myself. We've been collecting eggs from our large exhibit, Secret Reef, 618,000 gallons. We have this device that allows it to skim fertilized fish eggs off the surface of the water. Ordinarily, those eggs would just go into the filter. So our big fish in that exhibit are spawning most every night. So with this device, we're able to capture some of those eggs, raise them in a special system, and the idea is to reintroduce them to our exhibit. When we get to the point we have too many, share them with other aquariums. tend to raise them up to a few inches, and then they may spend a bit of time in Stingray Bay, our touch tank that I also take care of, before graduating to the Secret Reef back with their parents. So we actually had about a year ago now our first successful batch of fish that moved through the system and back to the Secret Reef exhibit. So that was a group of 20 Bermuda chub that are now about a foot long and doing very well, still in the exhibit. You'll be able to see those guys. But we've been raising all kinds of stuff like grunts and those chubs. We raised sergeant majors, a handful of different fish out of that exhibit. The idea being just to reduce strain on the ocean and keep that going.
All right, Kyle makes it sound fairly easy, but it's really complicated. And the very first step is perhaps the most complicated, because little bitty, tiny fish hatchlings need little bitty food.
Exactly.
And so the first step is what?
We talk about them being tiny, but to picture how tiny they are, when these fish first hatch, animals like the coral, we've seen how small those polyps are. The coral could actually eat those fish. They're so small that they're barely visible to the naked eye, so they need just the smallest food that there is. In our case, the smallest food we're using is a copepod, a tiny little crustacean that is it's called Parvocalenus, the particular one that we're using. And those guys are pretty easy to raise in decently large numbers. The hard part is the algae that the copepods need to eat. So the copepods, once they're going, no big deal. Problem is they only eat live algae. I talked about how the snails are in here cleaning the algae. Algae's easy, right? Well, it is, but when you want a particular strain of algae with a good nutritional profile, it's hard to really isolate that algae and get that to do well. So that's the biggest hurdle, really, is keeping our algae pure and clean and raising it for those copepods so the baby fish can eat it.
Yeah. So a lot of science. Anybody who's thinking about a career in marine biology or a career at a zoo or aquarium, start thinking about all of those cool science projects that you could be involved with that might help lay a great foundation to a career in science. Holly Phillips McPheeters, thanks for donating. We appreciate you. Jennifer Gordon-Smith, thank you for your compliments. We hope that you'll come back when it's safe for everyone to return to the Tennessee Aquarium. We sure are looking forward to that day when we can reopen and you won't have to visit us virtually. You can visit in person. You can spend some time just relaxing and enjoying the views here at the live coral exhibit. Janet, thank you for your compliments. Diane, yeah, we were referring to SpongeBob SquarePants. Look at this. There's the pineapple under the sea. As we're looking at the live coral exhibit, once again, in the Tennessee Aquarium's Ocean Journey building. We didn't do a penguin program on Facebook Live, but Jennifer, guess what? We do have a live camera in the penguin exhibit. So if you go to our Aquarium at Home page, which has all kinds of fun activities for kids, coloring sheets, activity sheets, video links, some links to some of our favorite films that we've shown at our IMAX 3D theater. We also have links to our live cameras, so you can check in on the penguins, you can check in on our sharks, and you can check in on our river otters. Julie, thanks for watching. Amy, this is a great question. I can't answer this, and I won't, because I like them all, but maybe Kyle will answer this. This may be the trick question that we trip up our expert. Do you have a favorite fish in this tank?
That is a hard one, for sure. I am very partial right now to the newest resident of this tank. This is a fish that I was trying to get for a long time, pretty rare, little special fish. This fish has been in the exhibit now for about 4 months. He is called a gem tang, and he is this spotted black and white fish right there. Pretty special little guy. They are really rare off the coast of Madagascar. Same family, same genus actually as the yellow tang right next to him, and the purple tang that we have over here as well, but just a much smaller range in the wild where that fish is found, so it's a much more rare fish that you don't really see often. So that's why I really like him right now, just not something that you
And what's
really
the name
see.
of this one again?
Gem, like a jewel, G-E-M, gem tang.
Gem tang, and it is gorgeous. And when you see it in person, I don't think that any technology can replicate what the human eye is able to see. And when you see that fish turning into the light, those spots on his body almost glow. It is a spectacular fish. It's like it has little constellations on its body. It's really spectacular. What's this orange guy up here? Because I would say if I had a favorite, It's probably the green Mandarin Dragonette, but I also like this orange guy, which is kind of swimming over here. And what is this? This is a beautiful fish too.
Yeah, that's a great fish. That's it's called a flame angel, and it's a member of the family of dwarf angels. So it doesn't get big like you see in the Secret Reef, the French angel that's maybe 2 feet across. But these little guys, they stay small. They tend to not eat coral. They can still. They can be pickers a little bit. But gorgeous fish, the flame angel.
All right. How often do you feed the fish? This is a question from Jack, age 9 in Dayton, Tennessee. Jack, thanks for watching. Kyle, how often do you feed these guys?
These fish are fed daily, just 1 time a day, which is more than most of our exhibits. Most tanks will feed just 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Reef fish, like these guys, tend to be a lot smaller. They tend to be extremely active, so they don't have a lot of fat stores or anything like that to kind of get them by. So we feed them daily more often just to make sure that they get all that they need in their diet.
All right. Dillian, Deacon, and Devin, thanks for watching, and we're glad that you love these lunchtime science lessons as well. And we're lucky that we've got so many great scientists here at the Tennessee Aquarium, and they're great communicators, and it's fun to have these virtual visits. And as much as you probably miss visiting the Tennessee Aquarium, our experts really miss interacting with our guests. So this is a great opportunity to do that. Jennifer, tune into that penguin cam right after we get done. You'll enjoy them waddling around. It is nesting season in Penguins Rock. Peyton, age 9, asks, are you guys still going to do live streams when reopen? And Peyton, absolutely. We are doing a lot more. We're increasing the frequency during this emergency shutdown that we have right now. Once we reopen, though, we still plan to continue to do live Facebook events. And what we'd like to know from people like you is what would be the best time in the future. What would you like to see? Maybe next fall, this would be good to be done at 4 o'clock in the afternoon after school. If you guys let us know, we'll try to do our best to respond and produce these live events at times when we can have the most people watching, because we really super enjoy connecting with everybody. Cheryl, thank you for your compliments. And it is like having your own personal guide, and it's great to have a personal guide like Kyle here today. Becky, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we won't be reopened by beginning of May probably, but we hope and we look forward to welcoming you back when we do reopen as soon as we can and as soon as it's safe for everybody. Suzanne, thanks for tuning in from Missouri. And Becky, thanks again for the compliments. Amy, good to hear. After school times would be great. I think it's probably a good idea. We'll try that. See how many people tune in. And Jessica, thank you again for the compliment. Again, I'd like to remind everybody that we have a lot of resources on our website right now, because we understand this is a challenging time for everybody. And you know what? We've got some fun things. We've got a lot of educational items. We have a lot of science-based learning that's just super fun. We have activities that will get you out in your yard around the safety of your home to explore nature and look at it with a scientist's eye, because our education staff has developed those resources. And guess what? Our education outreach coordinator, Bill Haley, has produced a naturalist notebook in Bill's blog, Mr. Bill's blog. Yeah, that's right. He visits all kinds of schools. He misses visiting schools, but he came up with a great way to connect with everybody. He's wandering around his yard and highlighting some of the nature right in our backyard, so you can read his blog and also check out the same kind of things that are happening in your backyard. And Joel Phillips says, Aunt Rose and I enjoy these videos. Hi, Kyle.
Hey.
Give them a shout out. And Bo, thanks for watching from Aspen. We're just about to wrap things up. Kyle, one other thing that I think you wanted to point out was, again, everything in here is live. And look at this gorgeous clam. Talk about it.
Yeah, that clam is really neat. A lot of people don't realize it is a live animal, just like the coral is. So most clams, this clam in particular, is called a squamosa clam. He is a member of the giant clam genus, so he's related to the ones that you've seen that get hundreds of pounds. This one stays a little smaller. This is about as large as he'll get. They are photosynthetic, so they have some of that zooxanthellae, just like the coral does. So they need really intense lights. When he's open like this, having that mantle exposed, that's going to allow him to make food. But he can also filter feed. And I say he, but clams are, they are not necessarily a he. They will spawn with other clams, just like the coral, can have a mass spawning. But unlike the coral, the clam will not divide. It won't reproduce asexually and become two clams.
What is this opening in the top? It almost looks like the siphon on an octopus.
Exactly. Yeah, same exact thing. So on the other side that we can't see is another opening. So water comes in that opening and goes out the siphon.
Okay, very cool. All right, one final question. Peyton from Long Island, New York asks, what degree would be best to get if you wanted to have a job teaching about animals just like you? What's the first step after high school?
So it's kind of a loaded question. There's many degrees you can get to pursue this. Something like marine science would be great, but the biggest thing is experience, and a lot of our interns that will come intern with us really learn a lot through that process, as well as making those connections and getting your foot in the door and just getting hands-on experience taking care of the animals that you want to work with. So whether it's experience having fish at home if you want to work with fish, doing that's a huge step in the right direction, and then pursuing some sort of degree, whether it be marine science, marine biology, general biology, things like that. But yeah, the biggest thing for sure is experience.
And to wrap things up, guess what? We found Nemo. There he is. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Peyton, I would add one last thing. If you're thinking about a career in science, if you're thinking about you love fish, we're a freshwater aquarium first and foremost. We have a lot of saltwater exhibits like this gorgeous live coral exhibit, but there aren't enough freshwater scientists in the world. So we really want people to learn to love and appreciate and to study and to become freshwater scientists. And we've got a great conservation institute with a lot of wonderful scientists who are doing some great work restoring lake sturgeon, restoring brook trout, restoring a lot of the colorful native fishes of the southeastern United States. So that's super exciting because there are a lot of opportunities to work in science, to share your love and passion for fish, and to help save some of these beautiful animals that live right here in our backyard. Kyle, thanks again for your time today. If you want to support the aquarium, you can click the Donate Now button here on this Facebook feed. You can also help us by just sharing these posts. Share this video if you liked it. Let your friends and family know, hey, there's some cool programming going on at the Tennessee Aquarium right now, even though they're temporarily closed. And we'll get open as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe for everybody to return. We can't wait to welcome you back. But for now, thanks for tuning in to this Facebook Live event. We appreciate you watching, and we appreciate you supporting the Tennessee Aquarium.